Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Dushyant Parashar from KBS Certification Services Limited. I'll just start with my own introduction at present. I have a more than 10 years of experience in the GHG accounting, and I have started my career from as a consultant. Then I have moved on to the uh, validation verification, that is the auditing part in the GHG domain. Earlier, I was with Vardhana Environment, that is an EIA consultant firm. Now I am with KBS Certification Services Limited. Here I have been working for auditing as per CDM, ISO 14064, sustainability services, BRSR reporting. Also, I have been into trainings for the standard ISO 14064 and 14067. I am certified auditor in ISO 14064, ISO 14067. So present today we are here for the webinar to have an understanding of the two terms carbon neutral and net zero. So we'll start with the terminology, the definition, how it came into, how it was coined, what led to the development of these two terms, what are their market significance, how you are benefited by having an understanding of these two terms, how it can influence your business, how to achieve these two things, and how relevant, because these are the two buzzwords in the market when you talk about the climate change, the global warming, the GHG emissions. So let us start with the first slide. So we start with the carbon neutrality definition. So carbon neutrality, what is carbon neutrality? When we say carbon neutral, so it refers to the balancing out the emitted carbon dioxide by the organization through its process, whether it falls under scope 1, scope 2, that is category 1, category 2 under ISO 14064. So when you balance what you have emitted, it is known as carbon neutral, being carbon neutral, and it refers to only the carbon dioxide emissions. So how you can balance? You can balance with the offsetting projects, purchasing the carbon credit projects that are available in the carbon market. So many companies are registering their projects. They are doing some good work by registering the carbon sequestration projects, the projects which are less energy efficient, which are leading to the reduction of the emissions. So those projects are being put into the carbon market. The companies can purchase them and can offset their emitted carbon dioxide emissions. To simplify what it is, carbon neutrality is set to offset total carbon emissions through sustainable practices or investments in the carbon reducing initiatives. The primary goal of attaining the carbon neutrality is to balance out the greenhouse gas produced with co-equal reduction elsewhere. So it's not necessary that where you are emitting in the state, in the country, in the district where you are emitting, there only you have to put a reduction project, or your project which you are using for as an offset is present there only. So that project can be anywhere else on the earth. So there is a very recent news related to the carbon neutrality in the market. So I have taken the similar example. So there is a baby girl, 2-year old, Adavi is the name. So she has been declared as the first carbon neutral baby in the world. What, how she has been declared? Her parents has planted more than 6,000 fruit trees with the help of the local farmers in the Tamil Nadu district of India, Tamil Nadu state of the India. So what these plants will do? The plants will ensure that emissions that were caused even before the birth of the Adavi will be counterbalanced by the growth of the trees alongside her age. So in this case, the plant will act as the co-equals in this case. So as the Adavi will grow, her activity will be bringing more emissions in the atmosphere, carbon emissions, and the trees which her parents have planted, they will grow along and they will sequester and the calculation has been done in such a way that they will sequester equal amount of carbon dioxide which the Arabi's activities will be doing in the atmosphere after her birth. So this is a very latest example of being carbon neutral. So next, with the picture, I will like to show what is carbon neutral. So on one side you emit, and on other side you purchase some carbon credit projects, and you say that I am the neutral one. So I have done some good work for the emissions I have done. So why it is so? There are many companies in the market which cannot, which are process restricted. They cannot reduce to zero their emissions because the product they are manufacturing involves the emissions, and they cannot deviate from that process. So for that emissions which cannot be reduced to zero, the companies purchase some carbon credit projects, and they do the act and declare themselves as carbon neutral. What is net zero? So net zero is abating at least 90% of the GHG emission, and that remaining 10% may be offset. So you have to reduce. Under net zero, when a company declare themselves net zero, it means they are putting all efforts to reduce the GHG emission. So here it will be the GHG emission, which will include all the six gases that is defined by the CDM. So all the emissions will be, the company will be trying their best to bring process optimization, raw material optimization, switching on to some new fuel. There are n number of methodologies which can help companies to reduce the emissions. So when you make effort to reduce at least 90% of the GHG emission from your process overall accounting, but only 10% you left for the offset. So then you can declare, under that circumstances, you can declare yourself as net zero if you attain that level. So here also I have defined with an example. Company Y accounts for 90% of the direct GHG emissions in the atmosphere in report of financial year 23-24. And also company Y have given a public commitment to achieve net zero target for its direct emission in the financial year of 2026 to 2027. So the company has made a commitment also, and they are accounting also what emissions they are making. So if the company has said that they will meet net zero target, they will formulate a strategy how they will reduce the emissions year wise, month wise, or at once. So the company, for an example, I have taken, the company makes a year wise plan that they will reduce 30 tons each year. They will do some process optimization, they will change some raw material, some technology, some innovation will be done in the process or in the value chain or in the energy purchase, but they will reduce the 30 tons of overall reductions in the direct GHG emission each year. So next year they will be 60, next year they will be 30, and then they will be zero emission. So by the year 2026, 2027, they can declare themselves net zero. So in this way, a long-term strategy is being planned to attain the net zero level by the companies. So next, in this slide, it is a very clear example how to, what is the part to attain the net zero, how to attain net zero. So suppose a company in 2020, they have a total emission of 33.9 gigatons. In the 2030, they have the total emissions of 21.1 gigatons. From the journey of 2020 to 2030, they have reduced the emissions from the electricity heating in the industry level, from the transport, in the building, in each and every categories. They have reduced many amount of GHG emissions. But the target year of being net zero, the company has decided to be 2050. So in 2050, you can see that they are already making some positive works. They are doing some good work by which the carbon is being absorbed from the atmosphere. You can say the carbon dioxide is being absorbed from the atmosphere. So that's why the emissions are shown in the negative, zero point 0.4 gigaton minus 1 gigatons. So, and due to which whatever emissions like 1 gigaton, zero point 0.7 and zero point 0.5 gigatons they are still making in 20 to 50 are reduced to zero. So this is the example of how a company can plan a strategy to meet a net zero target. So how the greenhouse gas phenomena starts? Like what is greenhouse gas? How these terms come into market? What is the relevance? So it's a very common phenomena that we have all understood and we have came across in our early ages in during the school time, that the sun sends the energy to the earth in the form of waves. Partially the waves are being reflected back to the atmosphere, partially they are being absorbed by the atmosphere. Few gases in the atmosphere, they play the role as a, you can say, perforator to these waves, energy waves. The gases when increased, the concentration of these gases when increased in a value, in a concentration level above which they absorb more amount of heat energy, these waves, and reflect back into the earth's surface, then they causes the global warming, they causes the rise in the temperature. So it's not like greenhouse gas effect is anything bad. It was there early hundreds of years back, and it is required for the survival of the life on earth. Because maintaining the if the greenhouse gas effect is not present in the atmosphere, in the around the earth layer, then the life on the earth will not be possible. It will be a cold planet. Because of this, the heat waves that are absorbed and reflected back by the earth's surface into the atmosphere are absorbed, and heat is maintained, the temperature is maintained on the earth for the survival. But since excess of everything is bad, when the concentration of these gases increased above a certain limit, this positive effect converts into a negative version, and the temperature, the global temperature of the earth rise above a certain level that is not fit, creating a lot of negative effects on the climate, because of which many adverse incidents, very drastic disaster, natural disasters are occurring, like tsunami, rise in the sea level, frequent earthquakes. Everything is related to the change in the temperature or the global temperature of the earth's surface. So what are the gases which contribute in the greenhouse gas effect? The gases are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, sulfur hexaoxides. Mostly the sources is the burning of the fossil fuel, agriculture, fertilizers, and the electric equipments. You can see the sulfur hexafluoride, the value, you will find these gases, carbon dioxide, they are already there in the atmosphere in abundance, but above a certain level, they create a negative impact on the climate. Methane, landfills, fossil fuel extraction, this all leads to the emission of the methane in the atmosphere. Next is the fluorinated gases, including chlorofluorocarbons, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, and hydrofluorocarbons. The sources are various refrigerants, aerosol sprays, and the industrial processes. Though these gases are in very less amount, however, the impact is very, very high, because the global warming potential of these gases are very, very high. That is 26 or 30,000 times more than that of the one molecule of carbon dioxide. So how the greenhouse gases and the climate change connected? The global warming and the climate change. With the increase in the greenhouse gas cover around the Earth's surface, the temperature rises that we are calling the global warming, the warming of the Earth planet. The global warming refers to the increase in the Earth's average temperature, while the climate change encompasses the impacts. What impacts we are seeing due to global warming, like weather events, shifting ecosystems, rise in the sea levels. More intense hurricanes are seen, droughts are seen, heat waves are seen. The average temperature of each place on the continent, on the earth, has been changed. Earlier, where the average, the highest peak temperature in the summer was 38, now it can reach up to 40. Where the lowest temperature on the earth goes to 2 degrees Celsius, now it is going in the minus. Next, the climate change is not a small picture. It has a very bigger picture. You cannot confirm, you cannot constrain the impacts only to the high sea levels and ocean acidification, but it is having directly connected to the each and every humankind. Extreme heat and droughts lead to the reduced soil moisture and health that affects the food yield and the quality losses. That is directly related to the quality of life, reduced food security, reduced labor capacity. So you see each and every parameter of the human life is being connected to the impact of the climate change. So nobody on the earth can escape from the direct impact of the climate change. So this slide gives you a picture of how the sectoral contribution is done in the GHG emission globally. So you see transport sector, the emissions coming from the transport sector are 16%. The emission coming due to the electricity, whether it is coal based, it is natural gas based or oil based, it is 28%. Industries are contributing 31% in the total GHG emissions of the global level. Agriculture, landfill, land use, they are also contributing 18% in the total GHG emissions of the global. So this is the sectoral contribution in the GHG emissions in India. Agriculture in India is contributing 53% in the economy. However, agriculture in the emissions, the left figure shows the contribution of the sector in the economy of the country, India, and the right figure shows the contribution of that sector in the GHG emissions. So you can see the agriculture when contributes 53%, however, it contributes only 22.9% in the GHG emissions. So what led to the term net zero in the market? Why people are more concerned about attaining, why the organizations are more concerned about attaining the net zero or the carbon neutral status? So it was the historic Paris Agreement that was adopted by 196 countries under the Conference of Parties 21 in the year 2016. The overall goal of this agreement was to straightforward and bring down the not allow the increase in the temperature 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level and pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So the whole motto of the Paris Agreement was not to allow the increase in the temperature. When I say the temperature, it's the global temperature, global mean temperature of the Earth that should not be more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. In the year 2018, the Paris Agreement was signed in 2016. In the year 2018, the IPCC suggested that the situation has gone worse and to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, greenhouse gas emissions must peak before 2025 and at latest and decline 43% by 2030. So they gave an estimation, they gave an early warning to each and everyone that the peak should be before 2025 and the decline up to 2030 should be 43% of the total. So this was the warning given by the IPCC, seeing on the condition or the rise of the temperature, the trend of the rise of the temperature of the Earth's surface. So what happened after that? Paris Agreement requested all the countries which signed the Paris Agreement. The committee requested that each country should post their nationally determined contributions. What is the nationally determined contribution? It is like you, the countries willingly commit to some targets, to some reduction initiatives, and under a 5 years plan. So each and every country who signed the Paris Agreement, they come forward and they declared that by 2030, by 2070 or 2025 or 2040, they will be reducing the GHG emission by 40%, or some of the countries had said that they will become net zero by 2070. So these kind of commitments was expected by all the countries who have signed the Paris Agreement. So this commitment brings a new term, net zero and the carbon neutral, into the market. And since the NDCs are submitted after every 5 years, so it was expected that the country should come up with some progression in the next level. If in the first NDC they have said that they will reduce the emissions by 20% of the total, so in the next set they will come by they will come up with the higher values of 40% in the next 5 years. So the progression should be shown to and trace the progress to determine up to what level the country should reach. So there has to be a setting of short term and the long term goals. The short term goals is very well achieved by going for the concept of carbon neutrality by most of the countries, and ultimately the long term goal is to attain the net zero. So net zero can be only attained by eliminating all the GHG emissions under categories or balancing of the removal, minimal one. So I have taken an example of Bhutan. Bhutan became first committed to become carbon neutral in COP15 in the year 2009, and it became carbon neutral much prior to the target they have given. So at present, Bhutan is a country which is carbon neutral, and they have also committed to become the net zero by 2050. So this is an example where the country is carbon neutral and they have also aimed to become the net zero. So it is very clear that carbon neutral can be a short-term goal, but net zero has to be a long-term, and since it requires a strategy and planning. So Bhutan is currently developing long-term strategy, which will be important to develop the sectoral policy, particular in the energy and industry sector, because they have the major emissions from the energy and the industry sectors. Next is the example of India. India has also given some nationally determined contributions, which says that emission intensity of 45% below 2005 levels will be attained by 2030. And they have also said that 50% of the cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy will be switched by 2030. So they will be changing the 50% of the electricity that is generated by fossil fuel to the green energy. Also, India has given an overall pledge of 2070 to become a net zero country. So this is an example of NDCs which the countries are committing in the UN. So because of this NDCs, nationally determined contribution, the concept of net zero and the carbon neutral became a buzz in the carbon market. So now we will move on to the some major differences, like how you can segregate both the terms looks the same, whether it's carbon neutral or net zero, but it has a major difference. Carbon neutral allows a significant portion of emissions to be offset through carbon credits. That carbon credit program can be from the renewable or from the afforestation project. However, under net zero, company prioritize to go with making all the efforts 90% of the reduction, and remaining what is not possible to be removed or reduced, they go for an offsetting mechanism. So a carbon neutral, a manufacturing company in which mandatory raw material for its product is itself a carbon intensive, like coal and calcium carbonate. In this case, due to process restriction, the company, if accounted 100 tons of CO2 emissions, 100 tons of CO2 emissions from the process in the financial year 23-24, will have to purchase carbon credits of the same quantity from market to become carbon neutral. The other example is of net zero. A taxi company can change, if accounting for 100 tons of CO2 emissions and want to become net zero down the line 10 years, then they can plan a strategy of moving on from the diesel fleet to the electric vehicle fleet. So the major emissions of this taxi will be, which will be from the movement of the vehicles from due to the diesel vehicles, will be reduced by introducing the electric vehicles, and the remaining minimal emissions which will due to the corporate offices can be offset through the any renewable projects. They can might even install a renewable or a solar power plant to reduce further the scope 2 emissions under the electricity that is used in the office. So this picture also clearly shows the difference between how you achieve carbon neutral and how you achieve net zero. So for carbon neutral, you do the emissions from one side and you purchase the carbon credit projects on the other side and you become a neutral. But for net zero, you have to install the carbon credit these projects by yourself. You have to take initiatives of improving on the technology, improving on the processes which are less carbon intensive, bringing out the raw materials which are less carbon intensive, moving on to the fuels, changing on to the waste, bringing out circular economy into the process, and many more. Next is the emissions. Carbon neutral mainly concept of carbon neutral mainly focuses on the scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 1, that is the direct emissions, which is directly due to the process, direct activities of the company, and scope 2, that is due to the purchase of the electricity, steam, or any energy by the company. So in case of an oil gas company, it finds very difficult to reduce the scope 1 emissions because of the process restriction. They will extract the oil and they will be under the scope 1 emissions, and they majorly goes for the carbon neutrality. However, in case of net zero, all the categories are being focused because it's an absolute zero figure. You have to cover all the categories, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, to declare yourself net zero. Next is carbon neutral and net zero in terms of long term and short term goal. As we have already seen that carbon neutrality is because of the purchase of the credits, you can invest in some projects which can offset your emissions, so that do not need more changes in the business structure or in the policy or in the process. So it's a short term goal. You can make it an immediate effect. However, to attain net zero, it requires to change in the business practice, potentially leading to the innovation or some new efficiencies, which may be achieved through restructuring the organization, operations, or supply chain or energy use. So you have to either work on structuring the organization, you have to change the operations, you may change the supply chain, or you may change the energy usage to bring down the emissions to zero under that category. So doing this all requires a detailed strategic and a risk assessment to be conducted, and then only you will be able to find an opportunity for reduction of the emissions. So this requires a long-term strategy. Hence, the net zero is a long-term plan. Verifications. The carbon neutral reports which are being prepared can be assured under the various standards. One of them is PAS 2060, which can give you the credibility of the offset projects. Under ISO 14064, the verification can be done for the inventories which are prepared by, by the organizations. Under that inventory, the GHG statement that is prepared by the organization can be assured, can be verified by a third party validation verification body. And under their certificate, they can declare and they can prove themselves that they have attained a net zero status. What is the public perception for both these terms? If a company is going for carbon neutrality and other company is going for net zero, for carbon neutrality it is generally seen less favorable to the party. However, the net zero term, it makes more positive impact on the customer. So now we have had a knowledge what is the terms, why they are important, how they are coined. Now, how to make them implement in the organization, how we can achieve, what is the route. So there are several technologies available in the market, and companies and organizations, few are practicing them and they are very well established. So changing from the grid electricity to the renewable energy based electricity, generating the power from the waste heat recovery plants, shifting from AC units to the centralized system, steam-based district cooling system, shifting from LEDs, shifting to the LEDs to the smart lights, energy efficiency, bringing down the energy efficiency in the operations, bringing down the alternate fuel method in the cement sector, that is known as AFR technology, moving on to the electrical vehicle or to the green hydrogen vehicle from the diesel vehicles, shifting from road transport to the rail transport, extracting the coal bed methane recovery projects in mining, shift from the coal to the clean fuel gas like propane, optimizing the raw material if at particular process in at particular process the coal is being used, so you can move on to some hydrogen injection in the process of DRI manufacturing. If the coal is used in a bulk amount, you can move on to the hydrogen injection that will reduce the amount of coal that is being consumed in the DRI and will also increase the production, since the amount or the space available for the production will be more. So these are the some technologies which are available in the market and also being practiced by many companies who are proactively working to attain the net zero target. So carbon dioxide removal plants are also installed in the chemical industry. They can directly remove the carbon dioxide from the emissions, fugitive emissions. Direct air capture is also the very recently and very frequently used technology by the companies. Carbon capture and storage projects, although few, but and very expensive technology, but is very effective and are still in use in the world. So few of the carbon neutral projects, since these are the short term goals and you need to just invest in these projects to say that you are a carbon neutral company, you can neutralize your emissions. So they may be from the renewable energy projects, wind, solar, hydro projects. They may be from the energy demand projects, that is cookie stove projects, safe water projects, or you can say the LED distribution projects. It can be the waste to energy projects. You can capture the methane, the projects where methane is being captured from the wastewater treatment plants, landfills, biogas plant, power generation through biomass. So these are all the waste to energy projects, or they may be the forestry projects, or it may be the transport projects. So we have the bulk technologies, we have the bulk in bulk, the the projects which are available in the market for reducing, for offsetting the emissions. Now, why to do this exercise? What will be the benefit to the organizations, into the business, for performing all this exercise to take the pain of being declaring the carbon neutral to become attain the net zero target? So here I have listed down some of the benefits which the company, the organization may have if they are working, they start a journey towards being the carbon neutral or to the net zero. First is by target setting, business may be able to get a better realistic sustainable goals. Targeting net zero provides a structured approach to minimize the environmental impact. Without making any target, there will be no roadmap and no data available. So how to make the company sustainability more sustainable in the process terms? It also helps setting out the target. You will make some efforts. We will make a roadmap. You will analyze the options. We will give you a risk management analysis. It will help companies to identify the risk associated with the climate change and emissions which are material and likely to impact the investment decision. At present, there will be many processes, many steps in your process which might possess and which have the capability of creating a risk to the climate change. So under the risk management, when you are moving on to the net zero, you have an opportunity to identify them and work on them. Definitely, moving on to net zero, you will get a reduced GHG emission. It will help you to identify the emission reduction or removal, and for unlocking the reduction opportunities. The company might not check the feasibility of switching on to the fleet from diesel to the EV, but however, once they make a commitment to meet the net zero, they will try all the opportunities, they will explore the market, they will check the whatever are the sources of the emissions in their inventory, and they will work on them, and then they will get an opportunity to reduce the emissions. Many a times we have seen that what options for we are taking to reduce the GHG emissions result in the resource efficiency and cost saving also. So once you identify and implement the emission reduction opportunities, you might came to know that they are lower energy consuming. They are also circular economy, which will definitely reduce the revenue that is spent by the company on the raw material purchase. That will lead to the reduction in the waste. Reduction in the waste definitely cause protect the loss of revenue, that will reduce the loss of revenue that is given to the vendor which is handling the waste by the company of the company. Also leads to the energy efficiency and cost saving. Example I have given, optimizing energy can significantly. Next is facilitating the performance monitoring and progress tracking. So this is the side benefits you get from aiming for the net zero. You will get the trends in the report of the emission data and better information you will have on what mitigation efforts you have already implemented. Are those mitigation working? How are their performance? Will you be able to, by that analyzing the trends, you will come to an understanding, will you be able to meet the net zero target or you need to make some more efforts. This structured approach to monitoring and tracking progress ensures that business stay on course and make more informed adjustments as needed. Next is definitely the very important one for all the business and all the organizations who are into revenue generation and want to have being a cutting edge, competitive aheadness from all the other market players, that being net zero declared as net zero company, now the customer is aware. They had it is a global awareness being created with the topic of climate change. So investors, suppliers, vendors, employees, consumers, and government body and those public interest organizations all prefer to work with the company, all prefer that in their upstream or downstream, their vendors or their purchase customers should be the company who is proactively working on something on the climate change. They should declare themselves carbon neutral. They should have some net zero status. They should have some roadmap to the net zero. They should. So you can see in the market there are many rating agencies. There are global companies who are working day and night to rate the products. Each and many products are even getting the tons of CO2 emissions which is being done for their unit production. For an example, a pan will come with a label of tons of CO2 emissions which was created during its manufacture. Company like Apple and many other, they are declaring in their promotional event that they have made the new version a carbon neutral by moving on to circular economy, by using more of the waste material, the raw material from the waste, using less of the virgin material. It is also recyclable. So these are the major steps many big companies are taking to make their image in the market, and that will also help in some part in the revenue saving. Future proofing in the next in line, since the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius, not to allow the temperature of the global earth to move ahead of 1.5 degrees Celsius. The target is very close. The world is working on it. So all the governments of the countries, they are trying hard to make the new norms to, so the companies will come under the compliances. So working on the carbon neutrality and setting out the roadmap and starting its journey today towards net zero will help these organizations to become pre-prepared once they come under the compliance, and they will be having some reported structure. They will already be under some set management system, and they have the optimization of the emissions where they can have the opportunity of reduction, identified opportunity for the reductions. So this was why carbon neutral, why net zero, why how these two terms are different from each other, and why a company should go for targeting the net zero, what impact it will make. Definitely the emissions done by the organization, by the companies, from their day-to-day activities. They are increasing the global warming, and since it is a result of the collective effort, so we all have to do a collective effort for the reduction also. That can only be met once each and everybody will try for a net zero aim and will make a step ahead towards reduction in the emissions. So from here, I'll just give you a handle how KBS can support you in your journey to achieve net zero or become a carbon neutral. These are the services being provided by the KBS management. We are into management certification, product certification, energy water audit, climate change training, third party inspection, sustainability services. So if you have prepared the GHG report, you are an organization, you have prepared the GHG report, you can get a third party assurance from the KBS. We are a validation verification body. If you want to get the report prepared for the GHG, we can prepare that. Under sustainability services, we are preparing BRSR report, GRI report, GHG accounting reports. If you need the training for your team, how to end the implementation of the system for reducing the GHG emissions in your system, to identify the opportunity to do the risk assessment and the strategic and providing you the strategic analysis and the roadmap to reduce the net zero, we can give a training for that. We are also into the climate change services. We are almost completing 2 decades in the climate change services, and I'm glad to announce that we were the first DOE in India who started the climate change services here in India and got accredited from the UNFCCC under the CDM. We also do the third party inspections and the project certification, energy audit, and the water audit. So these are the various accreditations we are being associated with. We are accredited with UNFCCC, VERA, Gold Standards, ICR, GCC, Plan View Isometric, ISO 14064, BRSR, Sustainability, and GRI. So this is why you choose KBS to work with you, to help you in your journey towards moving to the net zero. So we provide the quality services, also the cost effective. KBS cares for the qualities, safety, sustainability, compliance, business stability, timely completion. KBS commits for 100% confidentiality. So in during the presentation, I was talking about the carbon climate change offset projects. So we are into the validation and the verification of these projects from 2 decades. And we have worked with several registries, which finally approve these projects and put them into the carbon market, from where the companies purchase the carbon credits and offset their emissions which they have created due to the various operational and value chain activities. So this was all for the topic from my